Welcome back to Little Snickers, baby. I'm Michael fucking Rainey here with Kaudan Jala.
Hey, buddy.
Our dear friend Jacob Furman Matera is at another swingers retreat in Florida this week, so we'll be missing him tonight. However, we have a special edition of Little Snickers. It's a little bit different than what we normally do. We're talking about a current case that we've been interested in for a while, and we invited two of our dear friends along to discuss it with us. We invited Jason Zod and John Hunter from the Trash Cast. Boys, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
I
us.
hope your dear friends show up soon too. By the way.
Yeah, whenever they get here, we'll bounce the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Jacob's dick deep in some pussy, so I wouldn't expect him for a while. But go ahead,
sorry.
John.
I was just gonna say I was hoping it wasn't the diddler again.
No, he didn't get diddled. Like he switches off between getting kidnapped and actually swinging pretty hard.
Wait, but the last episode, the diddler was around. And we
He
haven't
was.
seen Jake since.
I did see an Instagram story of Jake in Disney World,
Okay.
which I didn't like. So I don't want to see any more of those, Jake. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about a case that's pretty prominent in the news right now. And Jason, John, and even my dear friend John Del Collo right here and I have been into for quite a while. And it's something that it's as perplexing as it is horrifying. Talking about the Delphi murders. The Delphi murders occurred in February 13th, 2017 in Delphi, Indiana. Two teenage girls, aged 13 and 14, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, were murdered. There's been such little information coming out about the case until recently. The public was kept in the dark. The only really thing of substance that had emerged in the I guess we're close to 6 years out from when the actual murders occurred that had come about was a video that one of the victims had taken of the murderer, who people refer to as Bridge Guy. Within a few days of the murder, police released the still photo from the video, and then how long after the murders was the actual video and audio release, guys?
Was that March or April?
Yeah, that was March. But it was after
Oh
the
no,
search
no,
warrants.
no! That video came out in
The 2019 presser.
2019. The picture came
Okay.
out, and then the video was 2019.
The initial audio was March.
Yeah.
And then the video came out in the 2019 presser, along with the second sketch, which is
But that's
a whole other
jumping ahead. Yeah.
ballgame.
Yeah, so there's so many fucking strange aspects to this, aside from the awful aspects, which are two kids were brutally murdered, and we even don't know the exact cause of death, which is strange that kind of information hasn't come out yet. But initially, the kids were supposed to be picked up by one of the girls' fathers. So they were dropped off, I believe, after 1 p.m. on February 13th. And around 3:15, one of the girls' dads was in the parking lot close by to the Monon High Bridge where the girls were hanging out. He was there to pick them up, and they didn't show up. And by 5:15, he felt as though the girls were missing. So family came to look for the girls, and then as word began to spread that the girls, something wasn't right, more and more people from the community came to look for the girls, and into the night, the community came in and just searched the entire area, and they didn't find any sign of the girls. Until the next day. I believe it was like maybe around noon the next day, the girls' bodies were found in an area that I guess is not technically part of the trails. It's actually on private property, which is owned by a guy named Ron Logan, who was later, his property was investigated. But we still don't know if he was involved. We know the FBI issued a search warrant for his property within, I think it was like a month. March 17th was the day of that the Ron Logan property was searched. But the girls were found on his property. No cause of death has been released other than in the FBI, search warrant, they said that there was a lot of blood loss, so the killer probably had blood on his belongings. They said there were fibers and hair found on the bodies. What else did they say in that search warrant?
It was
There was cell tower data that was used to obtain probable cause.
well, there is a redacted part in there that basically people have kind of figured out that it said bladed weapon, but they don't.
Yeah, and edged or bladed.
or edged or bladed weapon, but they didn't really go into specifics on what that would be. I mean, that could be.
I believe, if I remember correctly, it said that there are no defensive
Wounds, right?
Which just for your audience, we both had professional backgrounds in dealing with homicides. I was a cop for about 13 years and continued in a professional capacity. And homicide investigation. So I got about 19 years racked up altogether. John, I don't know what you want to say about what you've done, but you've got extensive history in it as well.
I just was a crime reporter. I've just been on a lot of scenes and everything. So.
Right. Bladed weapons without defensive wounds, like blade weapon killings are horrid, violent, intimate, messy murders.
Yeah.
So if that is in fact true, it's such an anomaly in and of itself as a set of facts that it sits wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One other thing that I wanted to add before we get into more details from the search warrant was that there were probably a couple hundred people out there searching for the girls, correct?
Yeah.
So that really adds a lot to the complexity of why it's taken so long to finally get an arrest, where the arrest was made at the end of October. They finally have one person under arrest, and I don't think most people don't think it's going to be the last arrest related to this case. So there were a ton of people wandering around the area searching for the girls, and I can't imagine how many people actually walked through the crime scene.
This is the day they were found, or the day before?
Probably both. I wouldn't discount that they were actually walking through the crime scene in the dark.
By the time lots of people were on the scene, it was dark, I imagine. On the day. Yeah.
And they called. I think the police officially called off
Called it off. Supposedly, people were still out there searching at the time.
Yeah, like all through the night, people were, but like the official search was called off. And so, like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if people were walking through the crime scene.
Do you think it's strange that they called it off that night?
No, because when you're dealing with one thing, they presume that the girls were just missing, not dead or harmed or anything at that point. But when you're having like civilians out there searching that aren't trained, they don't want people out there that could possibly fall, get hurt, fall in the water, drown, all these other things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We
were out there, and it's not the easiest terrain to get up and down during the day. So especially at night, I can imagine, you're risking other people getting injured in the woods at that point. So call it off for the night.
Especially
it was not
far
involved. Though. They were less than a 5-minute walk from the bridge, the side of the bridge that we were on. And it's almost like a trail that leads you there.
It's a really nice place. I mean, there's multiple trails there, and the trail that leads to the bridge. All right, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit and just talk about our time from when we arrived there to what we experienced there and what your thoughts were upon like processing the whole environment there. So Jason, John Del Calo, and I went to the Monon High Bridge in June of 2021. Mm-hmm. We went out there just to get a feel for it, try to get some context in regards to like what people were dealing with out there and, how sound travels out there. And even though it was a completely different season, I felt as though we could gain a lot more context than we can just through looking through videos that are on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Some of my biggest takeaways were that sound travels very weird out there. I felt as though we were being watched at points.
That it might just be paranoia from your own brain.
I agree with that. And
there was one shotgun blast while we were out there. So
but I mean, you're around big properties.
You're gonna, know that being in the woods and
Indiana.
Yeah, it's a rural area, and we walked all around the trails there. There's a lower trail which leads to Deer Creek, and then there's an upper trail which leads to the Monon High Bridge. Now, on the Monon High Bridge, that afternoon, shortly after being dropped off, the victims were dropped off by one of the victims' sister, Kelsey. Shortly after being dropped off, they were taking pictures and posting them to Snapchat. And it wasn't long after posting to Snapchat that the girls were likely abducted and shortly thereafter probably murdered. It's amazing to me that police had this much of a head start. And what I'm referring to is having video and audio of the fucking killer. And we're almost 6 years in now, or 5 years in.
Almost
6, yeah. It's almost 6 years in. That they finally were able to make an arrest, and it was somebody that lived less than 2 miles away. And when we had gone to Delphi, we had stopped at the sit-down Pizza Hut, which was a godsend, which we didn't expect, and we just happened to come across it.
Montebello.
And for 3 fat fucking morons like us, it was right up our alley. But it was insane to think that the guy that they just arrested for the murder could have been less than 100 yards away working at the CVS where he was. So think about that the next time we're eating breadsticks there, Jason.
Yeah, I'll just think about.
We almost caught him.
You know what I'm talking about.
But the Delphi Pizza Hut was remarkable, and it was really a nice throwback to Pizza Hut's past.
All right, we'll do a 1-minute Yelp review of the Pizza Hut.
Light on the murder.
Did they have the plastic cups? Yes, they did.
Oh God, it was incredible. Yeah,
Oh
Pizza
my
Hut
God,
there
we're
was
still
incredible.
doing the review.
Our
You guys
waitress
got me drinking more soda in that place than I had in like the
Oh my
entire
God,
year
the sodas
combined.
go down so fucking easy at Pizza Hut that I cannot wait to go back to Delphi.
Can we get a Yum Brands Incorporated logo on the screen at this point when we're talking about Pizza Hut? Shout out PepsiCo.
Yeah, they were terrific. But we spent some time just driving around town trying to get a feel for things. It's a very quiet town. People are very reserved there, and I'm sure there's YouTube dickheads roaming around left and right just being obnoxious. So we try to keep as low key as possible. And one of the things that I thought was like, I don't know, really just added like another creepy element to it was there in one of the buildings by, I guess, like the city hall there in town. You see the posters of Bridge Guy. So that was really, I guess, sobering more than anything.
Yeah, that's a good word. That was, if it affected me seeing that.
Yeah,
Such
right in
a
the center of
small
town.
And, it's
and they
Jesus
were weathered
Christ,
too.
you know?
They'd been there since they came up with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were
That's
4
seen some age.
years old or whatever.
And the town is, I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I don't know if you're going to get to this, but as far as the sketches go, the two sketches, which are an issue in itself. But I didn't want to jump ahead if that was something you're going to get to.
No, one of the last things I was going to mention before I think we can get to that is that Delphi, I think, is only about 3,000 residents. So it's a pretty tight-knit community. And I feel like we inadvertently drove down a road trying to get to the Monon High Bridge, and I believe it happened to be a road that one of the victims' families lived on. Totally by mistake, and I later found out that, like, okay, that probably was a road that they lived on, so we really looked like fucking dickheads when it was a total accident. But I think people are aware when you're not from there.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, you really have to, like, be on your best behavior, not that we're there looking for trouble, but, I think anybody who's not from there will easily stand out.
Yes. There's real you ain't from around here boy energy.
Without a doubt.
And rightfully so, man, because I cannot imagine, because especially up until now, as painful as I imagine that event is now for everybody that lives in that town, like, imagine you're fucking close to 6 years in, and it's still a double murder in a typically sleepy small town is still fucking unsolved when you have the head start of a fucking video and audio.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention, everybody in that town nearly has been accused of that murder online.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just, I can't imagine the bad blood,
well, dressed like you are right now, your ass is getting ready to get killed. So.
hey man.
Yeah, thankfully when we went, John was dressed like an absolute fucking dickhead. So I feel like he took some of the heat off of Jason and I.
Look, I got that vest for a good price.
I'll bet you. I hope you did. I hope you got it for fucking free.
Love that vest.
Thank you, guys. It's gotten me. Look, it's got a lot of pockets. Let's not lose focus, all right? We were staying on a good timeline, right? We haven't jumped very far.
No, I don't
ahead.
think we have.
Okay, we're still
just trying to lay out the basics of the case. In regards to getting a feel for the area, when we were there, it was spooky the entire time. And there's a video that I think I might post on our Patreon, which is a little stinkers, and I'll send it to you guys too if you guys want to put it up too. That I took when we got to the north end of the bridge, which is the first part of the bridge you'll get to when you're walking from the head of the trail.
And this is the path the girls took as well.
Yeah, it seems to be the path they took where they crossed the Monon High Bridge, which is really fucking scary. I couldn't cross it. I made it about maybe 15, 20 feet in, and I'm scared of heights, and it was windy that day, and the railroad ties were in awful shape, so I'm surprised somebody hasn't fallen through that fucking thing yet. So
Yeah,
I couldn't make it across.
I wouldn't have done that as a child, let alone as an adult. That's pretty shady, shifty looking bridge.
Yeah, so the girls, they started on the north end, ended up on the south end, and that's where the video came from. One of the victims took a video of the guy coming towards them. They were aware that somebody was coming, and one of the girls had the wherewithal to start recording, and she recorded the guy getting pretty close to her. There's 43 seconds of video, although I think they've only released 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot that we haven't seen or heard. And at one point, the girls are commanded to go down the hill, which I think is the hill at the south end of the bridge leading to the private drive. And next to the private drive is where Deer Creek is. And I'm assuming that they were somehow forced across the creek and onto Ron Logan's property where they were found. Although in the FBI search warrant, it is stated that they were probably moved and the bodies were staged.
Does that still seem to be true by your guys's?
Well, and nobody really knows.
I hesitate to make anything beyond just a slight opinion that, moving and staging doesn't necessarily mean they were dragged in excess of 20 feet.
Yeah.
It just, post-mortem positioning.
Yeah. There's a lot of rumors about what kind of positioning they were in.
Yeah.
It's like
I still maintain it's far more efficient to move them back across the bridge. They'd already all three crossed it.
And getting to that, referring back to the video that I mentioned that I took, you can walk directly to where the crime scene was, where the victims' bodies were found, from the north end of the bridge. If the bridge guy had walked the girls back over the bridge, I feel as though it's much easier for a person to command two people down that path leading to where the victims were found, rather than walk them down the hill and across Deer Creek, which, I don't know, seems to be like the common train of thought.
Is that really the most accepted opinion? Is that they went through the water?
Through the creek, yeah.
And it's not reported whether or not their clothes were wet when they were found?
No.
Yeah, they don't. They reported finding clothes in the water, I think. But
there's nothing confirmed.
I thought that was in that search warrant, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
Well, they did say in the search
clothes taken.
Yeah, they did say in the search warrant that that an article of clothing may have been taken.
Okay, maybe.
So I think that was one of the things they were looking for on Ron Logan's property. Now, Ron Logan, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know that he was involved at all. I think he's a guy. He's an elderly guy whose home is about 1,400 feet from where the victims were found, and he did get caught up in a lie saying that he was somewhere where he wasn't at the time of the murders, which I think really dug him in deep. But I think he may have just put that out there because he was in danger of going back to jail and violating his parole for DUIs.
Oh, I didn't know this information.
Yeah. So
he was drinking somewhere he wasn't supposed to be and all this other stuff.
And driving.
Yeah, and driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had called someone to say, like, hey, if anybody asks, you took me to the aquarium, you picked me up at, I think he said, like 3 o'clock and brought me home around like 5:30.
Oh my God.
It's like
just
the absolute
drunk.
worst
Yeah.
time you could be.
Should have just stolen a cop car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
so
you guys remember we were going to the scene. You had to go down a giant fucking terribly steep hill
Yes.
from the north end of the bridge as well. So
yeah.
Which I imagine the day of search party, probably no one ventured down that hill. Even as the sun was setting, it's still pretty steep, pretty dark.
Yeah.
I'm assuming a lot of people would think they probably didn't go down there. And that's why they didn't find them the first day.
I could picture that being true.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that stood out about that area is we parked where there's designated trail parking, where you cross a bridge over, I think it's the Hoosier Heartland Highway, and get to the trailhead. But then we also, the next day, we parked at the cemetery, which looks down upon where the victims' bodies were found. And one of the interesting things about that cemetery and parking at the back of the cemetery is, if you parked at the back of the cemetery, your car is not visible from the road. So I think if somebody's planning on doing something like what was done that day, I could picture them being aware of that and parking at that point. And then after committing the murders, it is a steep walk up the hill. However, it's a much shorter distance to get to than walking back out to where the designated trail parking lot is.
And in winter, there's significantly less vegetation than when we were there. The ground was harder. It was easier to get up and down.
I think it is worth noting though that it was unseasonably warm at that time.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any snow, but being that it is Indiana, I'm sure the ground was much harder than it was at the time when we went there.
That also makes the going through the water seem a little more
less likely,
difficult
right?
to swallow.
Yeah. I really do not think that is what happened.
It's significant drop off as well. It's a very steep bank at that point.
There's no trail from that side down to the water that I could tell. It would seem that they would start at the north end, go to the south end, and then it would seem that the guy forced them back over the bridge to where the trail system was.
That's what I'm thinking. Although I'm not sure. Maybe people are aware of something that I'm not, in regards to it being widely accepted, that they were confronted on the south end, which is clearly substantiated by the video. The most direct route from that south end to the spot where the victims' bodies were found is through Deer Creek. But again, like, being that it's fucking mid-February, and even though it is warm out, it's got to be fucking freezing. And I imagine if your objective is to kidnap two people, regardless of how far you're kidnapping them, it seems illogical to make them and yourself walk through a fucking creek.
Yeah.
And, from what I understand, too, there's nobody. I mean, we don't know this because they haven't really released information about witnesses or anything, but there's nobody around at all in the bridge vicinity, right? So if he's going to do this, he could have done it right under the bridge if that was his objective, right? But to cross there and to go into the water that way would seem, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of work for that. A lot of missteps could happen there.
No, I'm thinking
and they didn't.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought, John.
No, that was pretty much it. Like, you just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like, unless there was a reason why he picked that specific spot. But
yeah, I'd be interested to find out if there's any kind of connection to Ron Logan.
There's no law enforcement information about the river at all, about them crossing. This is all, armchair investigation,
Speculation.
People like us, Facebook posters. Okay. That's the common theory, and I have no problem saying that most of those people are wrong. Heard it here first.
I'm with you. I have a weird question pertaining to Mr. Allen and this particular line of thought and this particular point of the crime.
Richard Allen is the guy that was arrested recently for the murders.
The biggest thought when the announcement of Richard Allen being arrested, the thought that crossed my mind first was, this guy supposedly lived roughly in the south end area of the bridge. Actually not too far away from one of the victims. Why was he flushing them north? The graveyard being where it was, is that an indicator that transportation or something else was there, or a stage scene was there? But it seemed odd that, they would be flushed away from his point of origin, because it was very, very close. It's not a big town.
You think that it would have been more likely for him to put him towards his property, you're saying?
Most people are going to take the shortest path home, if that's where he's going, or wherever he's going. But it struck me as odd.
Oh yeah, but before you get into that, there's like perhaps other factors that lead to that as well.
Entirely possible.
Which I think,
I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But it was something that struck me as a little out of place, or at least the beginning of an answer to something else.
Okay.
One of the things that keeps popping up in my head in regards to like what he may have been thinking was that, all right, if they did in fact cross Deer Creek, like perhaps that was simply because of the emotionality behind this possibly being his first crime of this magnitude. And just being, no matter how many times he may have rehearsed this, just being totally unprepared for what the actuality of the crime was. So I think even though it doesn't make sense to kind of have two kidnapped victims walk across a creek, it could have happened just because he was just freaking out because he wanted to go to a place where he was more comfortable.
Well, it also could have been that they ran initially.
Yeah, I think that's a good
possibility. They ran down that hill as opposed to across the bridge, thinking that it would be easier to lose him, maybe. And then, there's no one knows when the down the hill dialogue is from, right? Because we only have that still image.
I think the family has listened to the full recording.
Okay.
So I think they would be the only ones aside from law enforcement.
Do they know? the things that we don't? The family? Does the family know?
I'm sure they're aware of a lot more.
Okay.
There were some
official
texts.
cause of death. That's so strange that it still hasn't been released.
Yeah, I mean,
They have the suspect in custody. Like,
one of the things that's all right. So I think next up, the next bit of information that people are clamoring for is the probable cause affidavit, which has been sealed. From what I understand, the probable cause affidavit, which led to Richard Allen's arrest, it was sealed, which is not typically the case in most probable cause affidavits. Can you guys better elaborate on that?
You gonna take the first look at this one?
No, go ahead. It's
what I'm going to speak to is mostly constitutional law. There are some Indiana law factors in this. In the case of probable cause with homicide, looking at the statute, the state statute by which they're charged, it's closer to what's resembling what they call a felony murder charge, which is something to where a person can be charged with murder as the result of another indirect felony or
such as kidnapping,
felony,
correct? Or commission
felonious
of
action.
All right.
Kidnapping, child trafficking,
rape,
bank robbery, all these things that are serious felonies are adjunct to something directly resulting in a death. You can't be charged with murder. And he was specifically charged with that on both counts.
Yeah, it's felony murder, not first. They don't have
degrees, right?
They just have
in
murder.
Indiana, right?
But they do have substatutes that.
Right. So that also is even more confusing because people are looking at it going, this could be, a variety of things, which, yeah.
Well, when you add a bunch of the other facts together, it would lead you to deduce that there's likely possibly more parties involved that they're looking to arrest.
To that point, one of the main characters in this that really kind of catapulted the case to the point where it is now is a guy named Kagan Klein. Now, Kagan Klein was a guy that was behind an online persona named Anthony Schatz. And earlier this year, he was I don't know if he was arrested this year, but
it's 2020.
Okay, he was arrested in 2020.
August of 2020.
On numerous counts of child pornography, solicitation.
He lived in Delphi, correct?
Was it?
No,
he's from, is it Peru? All right, was he charged with solicitation or was it all child sexual?
30
images?
altogether initially. Beginning, the date of offense on the first one he was charged with started in 2016.
Okay.
And then there were a slew from where they were discovered that were charged for date of offense on 2017. It was
all the way to
somewhere in February of 2017, and then
all the way to August, right?
Yeah, something to almost to August. But
he lived in Peru.
Peru, Indiana.
Peru, Indiana.
There's a Peru, Indiana, Mexico, Indiana, Kokomo, Indiana.
Yeah,
I was going to say Peru, Indiana as a joke, and it wasn't going to land. So
Epcot, Indiana. You could visit all these countries there, man. It fucking rules. Indiana's the best. Yeah, but Kagan Klein, like the information about Kagan Klein, which was was broken by the Murder Sheet podcast, which has put out a lot of like very interesting tidbits of information, which might not have been meant for public consumption. So it's debatable as to how they're getting this information. I think maybe there's a law enforcement person who's leaking this to them to kind of get the ball rolling and to keep interest in this case and kind of put some more pressure on the powers that be to put more information out there, or maybe kind of.
Okay, so their information seems to be coming from a reliable source.
I think so.
Okay,
it's not. Well, the documents they produced are 100% authentic. Like these things are unquestionably authentic. So that was the thing about the Kagan Klein when that came out. There was no debate about it. It was like this guy.
This is what it is.
Has been linked to these murders, right?
And one of the go ahead, John.
No, that was it.
I was going to say one of the wildest bits of information to come out from those Kagan Klein documents was that authorities who were questioning him in these documents mentioned that he was communicating with one of the victims that morning, utilizing the Anthony Schatz profile
on Snapchat.
On Snapchat, or was it Instagram?
That was Snapchat.
It was Snapchat. Okay,
I'm pretty sure.
Which really fucking adds another layer to this, because I think initially didn't police say that there was no online connection
Yeah, they said there was not a catfishing angle. There was no.
Yeah, which was really strange. I thought that was strange. I thought it was strange that the sheriff Tobe Lesenby came out and said that the community has no reason to worry, which is an insane thing to say when two kids
and it
have
was
been
ironic.
murdered.
It was ironic because they nicknamed initially the murders were called the Snapchat
murders
because the picture she took was on Snapchat of
and the video.
The video.
She got that picture on the Snapchat before.
It was a picture of her friend Abby, which was the other girl that was murdered, and
not the picture of the guy on the bridge.
No, that was from possibly her own. I don't know.
It was just her camera.
Her camera.
Yeah, we're not really sure, but anyway, yeah, it is strange that they totally shook that out, amongst other things too.
There was
because he was initially cleared as well. Kagan Klein.
There was an FBI agent who publicly cleared Kagan Klein and anybody who was living at the residence after they served the search warrant.
Nuts.
Which resulted in the seizure of child porn, child sexual abuse material. Yeah. Multiple devices found. Just blaring things that anybody who'd ever worked any of these cases would look at and say, hold on, let's just take a minute. Wait a tick. Let's put these on a Cellbrite device and get this straightened out.
And aside from all the devices that were found and that were searched, which resulted in these charges against Kagan Klein, there was one the police didn't get initially. And after he was initially questioned and released, he later contacted police to say, oh, there was one that I forgot about, which was, I think, an iPhone.
Mm-hmm. iPhone 5. That was his primary phone.
Which is nuts to think, like, all right, why was that the one that was not found?
Yeah, his primary.
What happened there?
Yeah.
And in documents later leaked, it did show that investigators found through a Cellbrite download that he did delete accounts with information directly after being questioned and before turning the iPhone over. He did his best to factory reset and clean that phone.
Uh-huh.
Also, I'm going to add just another weird angle to this thing was the picture that he used for the catfishing, this Anthony Schatz, was this guy, this model, right?
Who's a cop in Alaska.
Yeah, who now is a cop in Alaska, which is odd. You know, he just randomly picked this guy, which I don't know why.
Pretty hot guy, though.
Yeah, but so is Kagan, though. I mean, you know.
Have you ever seen Kagan Klein?
No, is that a joke?
Dude, he looks like Jabba the Hutt's stepson. He's a fucked up looking individual. Like there's you'll get why he's using a hot Alaskan cop's profile pic once you see this fucking mutant.
Yeah, I mean, I think jail's had it taken a little toll on him, but you know, he still got it together.
Yeah, I think he probably has a few girls in Carbonite somewhere, so yeah, it's better to.
So he's in for a bid now. He's not going anywhere.
Probably, although he just had 5 charges dropped, and some people seem to think
he's cooperating.
That he's cooperating, and his information may have led to the arrest of this guy, Richard Allen. There is documentation which came out today, which indicated that both parties, both the state and Kagan Klein and his attorney, are in talks to come to some kind of agreement. And my
second time this has happened.
It is, and my interpretation of that is that to me, it's no coincidence that there's finally a fucking arrest in this case after close to 6 years. Shortly after it was documented that Kagan Klein was taken out of jail for an undisclosed reason and transported to Grissom Air Force Base, which is in Indiana, for a meeting with state police.
All right, that is bizarre. That was after the arrest?
That was before the month prior to the arrest. That happened, and then there was an extensive search of the Wabash River, which was not far from Kagan's house.
To see if he dumped any hard drives or stuff in there.
Nobody knows. Yeah, but I think it's reasonable to assume.
They were out there for 19 days, and nobody knows what really they found.
Or were looking for specifically.
Yeah.
But you would assume it's either a weapon or a hard drive. All right. I don't know if this is jumping too far ahead, but I don't want to forget this question. Are the theories that it's more than one party involved potentially relatively new since around the time of the arrest, or has there always been theories for the past 5.5 years that it could be more than one person?
That's a great question. I think, John, going back to something you mentioned earlier, if you want to bring up the 2 sketches that came out, because there's been a lot of confusion regarding 2 separate sketches being released, and there wasn't much clarity as to why there were 2 sketches. There was always like a weird, I don't know, like a weird answer given specifically by the is it the chief of Indiana State Police, Doug Carter? Superintendent, who, you know, is clearly like emotionally invested in this case and is you know, clearly wants the best, but I think sometimes like his wording specifically in regards to these sketches can be confusing and can really muddy the waters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the sketches, the first one they actually released was this one of this guy that is an older guy with a hat on who has a goatee, and he literally looks like everybody in Indiana except for like Larry Bird and Bobby Knight, because
and a few sleep paralysis demons.
Yeah, everybody's been matched up to this guy. Even the grandfather of the of one of the girls. I mean, he looks exactly like the sketch, right? But you know, there's no rhyme or reason for this sketch. Nobody really knows where it actually came from. So
like to me, it's like, I don't know. My understanding is that the sketches were based on people who said they were at the trails that day. Both sketches, correct?
Right.
And they're pretty different looking men.
No doubt. Like one is like probably a 50-ish man.
Yeah.
The older sketches always had anomalous explanations as for where the source came from.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard certain people say that it was, from law enforcement say that it came from the video, which is, I don't know what you get from that, because that video is so grainy, you can't see anybody's face.
But it was, in fact, chronologically the second sketch produced.
Also, this is also another point that the audio, sorry, I don't want to jump ahead of that, but the audio, those words that were spoken on there as well, like down the hill, the guy says down the hill, right? That became synonymous with this case as well, because people started, who is this guy? Who is this guy? This voice,
the down the hill.
They started trying to match him with all these other people as well. Sounds like a lot of people. But sorry. So the second sketch that actually was
chronologically was created first
was this younger guy who looks nothing like the other sketch.
Right.
The second sketch actually was created or
was drawn
by a sketch artist.
Right.
That was actually something you can tell it's composite features that's put in through training or a computer program, depending on what they used. Probably freehand training.
So from that moment on, the multiple parties, the two people, theory was rampant at that point. Like, this is these are two different people. This is, and Doug Carter at that point mentioned that if you look closely, it's a combination. It could be a combination of both
that's really
sketches,
confusing.
which makes it even more confusing.
Yeah, that's incredibly confusing. Like, these are, and they would have both of those sketches up side by side, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking for potentially one man that could fit both descriptions, or two men that.
Yeah, dude. To me, it doesn't make sense. On top of that,
to have them both hanging next to each other. Yeah, exactly. Which one of these looks more like the guy in the video? And from the video, I would say that the suspect in custody resembles.
So
it looks like it's him.
And one of the things that I think should have been hammered home from that, and I think you could probably get a better representation of how tall this fucker was. I think, do people seem to be in agreement that the guy on the bridge is Richard Allen?
I think
major
so.
Consensus.
I think so too. And
I think Doug Carter almost said
it. Yeah. And I think with Richard Allen is maybe 5'6", which is significant because you should be able to tell that from the video.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though only 3 seconds has been released, like I'm sure with the other 40 seconds that are in the video.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of movement to compare him to the size of the bridge, like getting closer or further from the camera. I'm sure you would have been able to determine a height.
Yep.
At least range of a few inches.
You can measure the length of the boards of the part where he's walking, and then do a height comparison and get within 3 inches.
I was just going to say, took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, I think somebody's measured up to that had them between like 5'2" and 5'6" or something like that.
Yeah, it's just old algebra. I mean, basically.
Well,
old cop algebra, if you will.
Old algebra was John's rap name in high school.
Yeah.
You want to spit something for us?
Yeah, I mean,
now it doesn't seem like the appropriate time, but maybe at the end.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, the other thing to note is the disparity in the sketches. It's hard to rationalize that and say, hey, this is one guy.
Right. Like
And-
replace it and say this is a more accurate description. Because which one looks more like the Richard Allen? The second one that was released?
The old guy sketch, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
It's got a
which-
clear goatee. Is that the one with the hat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason I think they released that one first, even though they had the other one initially, is they probably had someone draw up a sketch of the guy they saw in the video, and it's not from a witness, because it takes some time to develop the labs on your, when you're downloading phone stuff, and they're going through all this stuff, which is, depending on the amount of information on the phone, can take a while too. So if it's something they had to get back from subpoena from a service like Snapchat or whatever, which I won't even go into how hard that shit is. It's, they may not have had that video for days or a week or so.
Gotcha.
But once they got there, like, we got you, fucker. So just draw this guy up, and then
Right.
there you go. Even though you had the witness sketch, which that the second younger guy is clearly a witness sketch. That is definitely
And just a sketch of a random person who he saw on the trail. Richard Allen could have never been even spotted on the trail that day if he came from the south side.
Well, here's the
Entirely
odd thing
possible.
is, though, he apparently was spotted on the trail that day because he was a witness. He came forward as a witness.
If that's true, I think
If that's true, and this is what, where did that come from? This was,
I don't know. I haven't seen anything concrete on that, but if that's true, it's something that has happened many times. I've had it in a case I worked with where a dude was trying to clean himself as, oh, I'm a witness. I wasn't a part of this, but I saw this, and this is where you need to look.
And do you think that people may be inclined to do that, Jason, if that comes about due to guilt, or do you think it's to absolve themselves more?
Both. Nobody wants to be in trouble. Nobody. It's the human psyche's different for everybody. People play a lot of the same plays, and they make a lot of the same mistakes. It is something that would, to me, indicate that it's a first-timer mistake. This is somebody who usually doesn't do this kind of thing. That's been my experience.
Which I think would speak to Richard Allen not having a criminal record.
Yeah.
right, other than like some minor, whatever it was, some domestic incident or something.
Right,
But, nothing
But he wasn't
else.
arrested. I don't think he was arrested for that. I
No,
think
no,
police
he
just
actually
came
wasn't.
in.
You're right. You're right.
It was just a call log in 911 that they were, they had to kind of give up.
I think it'll be. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. This was about Kagan Klein, but it has nothing.
Well, that's where I was going with the sketches. Now, you've got these other two people that the murder sheet has done an excellent job of profiling. If you just look objectively, I'm not saying this is them in the sketches, but objectively, you look at those sketches, and there are some pretty striking similarities between the two Kleins
Yes.
in those sketches, as opposed to combining them and trying to say, "Oh, we were just talking about this one guy the whole time." I'm just saying that from an objective point of view, have nothing more than
Well,
what we've all heard to back it up past that.
so according to that interview that law enforcement did with Kagan Klein, they said that he was the last person to talk to Libby
Virtually, yes.
on the that day. Told her to meet him at the bridge, right? Then
What we call pretty much a clue.
Then
within the whole murder business.
from the
That's what
info
that
that they
is.
pulled from his phone, they know that he searched a gas for
Marathon
the
gas station.
directions to a marathon gas station right near Alan's house. Right, it's near his house.
Yeah, it's not far.
So that complicates things.
And then
even more.
there's the post search of how long does DNA last, blah, blah, blah.
What do you think is the best explanation for law enforcement discounting that there was a digital connection? Because I think once they're able to establish that the Kagan or whoever used the Anthony Shots profile was in contact with Libby, to me it's insane to think that the investigation doesn't start right there.
Small agency. These people have never had to deal with this.
Dude, they had the FBI there.
I know, and I have been massively surprised at the ineptitude of the FBI in this case. That particular office and their history and the things that have gone on there.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me now that it's still a state case, because no assistant U.S. attorney is going to touch it after the toxic level of crazy shit the FBI did in and around that time in Indiana.
to that point, and one of the things that really, there's so many things that continue to surprise me with this case. And one of the things is, I think it was last week, it was revealed that someone who was a deputy for the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, which had jurisdiction over this case as well, one of the deputies recently filed a lawsuit against the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
Because he had been instructed by the Carroll County prosecutor to look into more resources to help investigate this crime. And he was basically shot down by his boss, which was the current sheriff, which was Tobe Lesenby.
Yeah,
and
he was demoted, taken off.
Yeah, he was demoted for it and taken off the case. And Murder Sheet also did a great interview with him. The deputy's name was Mike Thomas.
Mike Thomas.
Mike Thomas. Go ahead.
A lot of people are speculating that he's possibly a source to some people. I have no idea.
No clue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that just adds another wrinkle to this. And there's a lot of, I don't know, questioning of police tactics and how dogs were called to the scene that day, but then they were sent away, which is nuts because considering that this suspect who's currently incarcerated for this lived less than 2 miles from the scene. So it's not incomprehensible that he could have walked home.
Well, and that thing about the Marathon gas station as well with the closed cap, the footage, the camera footage.
They fucked that. They completely messed that up.
Dude,
they had that day.
The FBI went to the Marathon gas station, which is close to the Monon High Bridge, and they asked for the footage, and the owner gave them the footage from the day of the murders, and then the FBI accidentally wiped out the footage when they were in possession of it.
I think you guys might have told me that. That was known when we were there in 2021. The information was already released.
I don't think that was that.
No.
I think that was more of a recent development.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And they admitted it. They didn't try to blame it on the gas station. Always blame it on Marathon gas station.
Yeah, Marathon did it.
Fucking, yeah.
Marathon more like a sprint. You fuckers need to get it together. Marathon my fucking ass. Definitely not a Kenyan marathon runner, I'll tell you that much.
Philippides ass, running 26.2 miles ass.
Here is your hard drive. Dude.
Yeah, so
the amount of failure in so many different places is astounding. I've never seen anything like this on any level, on anything.
And you really just account. I mean, obviously the FBI was called in and they did some bungling, but you think it's mostly because it's such a small unit that the town is working with?
The county has original jurisdiction over the case. And to my knowledge, from what I've seen, I kind of looked into some of their cases and the dockets and stuff like that. They haven't had much of any of these types of cases charged. I'm not saying they don't happen there. They happen all over the country, especially during that time. I was 5 years before that, I worked with the ICAC team, which is an FBI task force, doing these kind of cases. And you had, I was intimately familiar with, the bait and lure, the sending the photos, all these different types of ways these guys operate. And, if you had a smaller jurisdiction that wasn't, half the time it was like, well, just wipe the phone and don't talk to them again and, do a factory reset. Which is exactly what happened with Libby's phone roughly, 10 days before the murders occurred?
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's
the possibility of, this was already in law enforcement's hands to some degree. They were familiar with something going on. And then just the continuous bungling.
Yeah,
they were familiar with the Anthony Shots count that day.
Pretty early on, yeah.
And
one of the things that really was disheartening about this is that they didn't immediately come out with that or at least say, all right, if anybody has had contact with this account, know that you're a victim because that needs to get hammered home more than anything else. Is that if you interacted with this guy, you didn't do anything wrong, especially if you're a fucking kid.
Yeah.
Like if you're a kid who ends up sending this account images, it needs to be reinforced that they're victims too.
Yeah.
It's just you're being taken advantage of by a creep. And that needed to be hammered home pretty early on, and I'm bummed out that it wasn't.
Yeah, you're preaching right there, man.
That would have. I think there was I may be wrong on this, and this is just speculation, but there seems to be there was an effort to sort of keep a purity over the victims, which I understand. And they didn't. Again, they are victims.
It's not honest. It's they're more of a victim for this.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. They're more a victim because somebody this guy who's clearly not who he says he is taking advantage of them.
Right. And Now, here's the question to you guys. Do you think this is there any chance that this is a lone person, that this is not tied in? Because it seems like the coincidence there, the fact that this guy just randomly comes out there the day that she's supposed to meet this other guy.
I don't think there's. I don't know. I'm like 99% leaning toward there being multiple people. One, because it's documented that multiple people were using the Anthony Shots account.
Yeah.
And two, just from the sheer logistics of the crime, I'm inclined to think that somebody was forcing them to comply somehow, which I think a gun was used. And then the other person was doing whatever they were doing. And one thing that I think was important that really stood out to me from the Ron Logan search warrant was that they were looking for camera equipment and anything, and a bunch of different photography items were mentioned in there.
Yeah.
So I wonder what they noticed at the scene that may have been relative to that, or if that was due entirely to what they found through the internet search.
That would have been something that you would put in that search warrant.
Is that standard?
Just to have it included.
It is.
Okay.
It would have been standard fare for a homicide where you had posing. Something to those degrees where you would expect someone to either take pictures, take souvenirs, both, whatever.
But knowing what you know now, as opposed to like, okay, it's not outlandish to think that was a part of it. You know what I mean?
No, it's not.
I mean, there's some we're talking about despicable, bottom of the barrel human beings here that,
I'm familiar.
No, John, are you asking specifically if more than one person was involved in the actual murder at the scene, or just involved in entirety?
Just the entirety of it. And so I guess
seems ballsy for there to be one person doing it in broad daylight, but for two, you know what I mean? I just feel like that almost doubles your chances of being caught, seen. You know what I mean?
More than doubles.
Yeah, like it really would seem foolish if there was. But also, what's the motive for one man?
I was about to say it does seem ballsy for that, but when you factor in that the sexual element has to be at the basis of this,
right? And are they planning on raping and murdering them? Are they planning on kidnapping them? And
I think it could be any combination of that. I think it could have been, I don't know, base level, like holding them at gunpoint and forcing them to just maybe pose for pictures, and then they took it a step further, or the motive or the objective all along could have been to maybe film these crimes happening, or it could have just been they decided right then and there that they're going to kill them.
I believe the person who actually ended up killing them had always planned ultimately to murder them, regardless of what other factors people who were involved may have thought or have turned a blind eye to. I believe that your principal in this is someone who always intended to cause death to those two girls. I don't think it was ever a question to the principal.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's what my training experience have led me to believe.
Okay.
But
regardless of what weapon was used.
Do you think that typically comes about because they feel as though the victims may have too much information on them, or it's just fulfilling a fantasy?
It's reprisal, it's power, it's the entire experience. Now, keep in mind, some of the folks that we've run into and learned about during this have, just sadistic, terrible motives and deeds involving children. Unrelated, but definitely, a great suspect was James Chadwell. And look what he did.
Yeah, the guy whose house we drove by. He was. I think he's been convicted of he kidnapped a neighbor, held her in the basement.
I remember this, yeah.
And then police were able to eventually rescue her. But it wasn't too far. In Lafayette, Indiana, which is, maybe within like a half hour of Delphi.
The amount of and I may be off on this, but it just seems like the amount of child predators, that area is just flooded with these people, man. I don't know what it is about.
What else you gonna do?
That's true.
Do you think that is more prevalent in rural areas, or do you think it's just a matter of coincidence?
I don't know. I think it's
opportunity
when you have employment, because there's that one place that obviously hires
the Packers,
will hire
Indiana Packers.
They'll hire people with criminal records, and I think if they you know, sometimes your options are limited. So maybe that's the case why they congregate in certain places.
Which is, I can't remember exactly how close the Indiana Packers plant was, but it's frighteningly close to where the victims were found.
Yeah.
And you have to think that, you know, of course, not everybody who works at a fucking meat processing plant has the potential to be a murderer, but, you know, you may think that, like, okay, if a person who's desensitized over time to slaughtering animals may be more inclined to acting out violently toward people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if you're acting like a hammer, eventually everything starts looking like a nail. So it's possible.
Well, I'm working on one theory though about what broke this case. Bear with me. Last year, 3 guys went to a Pizza Hut.
I'm listening.
Right?
I'm calling my lawyer.
100 yards away. Something, you know, he guy working at CVS sees these guys and he's like, look, it's coming down. And eventually he cracks. I mean, it takes a while, but he cracks. And I think you guys are heroes. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, John. Really I'm too humble to admit that, but I do appreciate hearing that. I will say this. I think for all the shitty, slimy aspects of true crime there are, I think one of the benefits is that so many people have been talking about this case and keeping it in the limelight. And I think, you know, the clearest benefit to that is that, you know, bigger news organizations will pick up on it. And I think when bigger news organizations pick up on it because they're naturally going to make more money through advertising, then it's kept in the forefront of people's minds. And at that point, there's more, I guess, there's just like an added push to find some finality to this, where I think in a lot of cases, where you see it in close by, in the Flora case, where that's kind of fallen by the wayside. Even though it's different circumstances, it's, you know, still a fucked up case that hasn't been solved. But not as many people are talking about that. But in small part, who knows, maybe in larger part, with so many people talking about the Delphi case, that may have been partially responsible for the resurgence in interest in it and ultimately getting an arrest.
Oh, Evansdale as well. Also just horrible.
Evansdale, Iowa, which is very similar to the...
And not too far, right?
Yeah, it's not
terribly far.
Yeah.
Not, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's another question that is really going to be interesting to see shake out was this, whoever's responsible for this, was this their first kill or was just a string of other murders?
I will say this. If CVS still sold cigarettes, I would have been in that motherfucker next to Pizza Hut that day buying a pack.
Yep. He's got gout too, so
it all would have been over.
I'm stunned that we didn't end up in that CVS at one point.
Between the three of us, it is kind of a miracle.
As overweight as all of us are, like, I'm stunned that one of us didn't sprain an ankle that weekend. Yeah. So how did we not end up at that fucking CVS and take this fucker down then?
Do you think you would have given him a second look had you seen him?
No. I honestly no, and I would be honest in saying if I did, but I don't think so.
If there had been more video released,
perhaps, yeah,
or descriptions about the suspect, yeah, I'm pretty sure he probably wouldn't have been in plain sight for so many years. Mm-hmm. It's fucking bizarre that they had. I mean, who knows how much of the video has him in the frame? Mm-hmm. But like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to find out how much more he's in that video. What else is heard?
If we ever find out, I don't know. They haven't released a lot of shit, and I feel like they won't. Right? Is that potentially not going to get released?
I think especially if he pleads guilty, we're less inclined to have access to a lot of that information. But
he, and another odd thing about it is that so there were people that, again, like everybody, it seemed like everybody was being accused of this, like from just, people who had nothing to do with this crime, but people were calling out people who lived in Delphi by name, putting their name, all their business online. This guy never mentioned. Nobody.
Radar.
That's crazy.
Nobody. When he got arrested, I was like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" Right. Like you don't hear
because we had people. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Yeah,
no, go on.
I got to show you this picture.
That was it.
Okay,
that was it basically.
Because there were persons of interest that Jason and Mike, you both had in mind.
That's him working at Walmart, laying in the fucking shelf.
Yeah. Is that for real?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for real. He's pulling the old Burt Reynolds.
Yeah,
He's such a little
what do
guy.
you call him?
He is a little guy.
Pervert. Pervert Reynolds.
We had multiple persons of interest, right? There was a lot of theories going around, and I think almost none of them lived in Delphi, right? We had people in mind.
In and around in some history.
Wasn't there one from like Chicago? There was somebody involved with like teaching and then geocaching, right?
Yeah, that was Indianapolis. Yeah.
Okay.
Look at this
We
fucking
called in
message.
that one poor dude and scared the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Look at this fucking message that my wife just sent me.
You want me to read it?
My wife just sent me a message saying helicopters all around our house and 95 by us is shut down. People are posting a dead body is found in the water.
Holy shit!
Yeah, what the fuck, man? All right, we got to talk about some more upbeat shit, man.
We haven't
Talk about Pizza Hut for a while now.
Sure.
Maybe we could summon that in, but yeah, I mean,
Are we up to date at this point? We've given all the back.
the latest. Today there were some developments where there was Richard Allen had written a letter asking for a public defender. So I think that's a significant development. He already has a trial date set, which is that odd to you guys that that's
seems
already been set
fast,
for
right?
March? Yeah.
No, they file it that way. Indiana has a certain set of state statutes for speedy trial that they do.
Oh, that's
and
right.
It's just meant to be continued. It's not going to be then. The weird thing about that letter is I was looking at the postmarks on it. The order for him to be sent out from White County Jail, which is where that originated by the marks on it, was the 3rd. And they didn't post from there till the 7th. And then arrived at the clerk's office today at the 9th. So they held on to that for a good long time.
Dude, there's one other thing that stood out to me in that letter. So he's referring to he and his wife not having the money to hire a private attorney.
Yeah.
And he refers to the both of them as my wife and I's.
Eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought of was that perhaps the audio isn't him saying guys. Maybe he's speaking to the girls and referring to somebody else with him as saying so-and-so and I's want you to do this.
What if he has a real bad Cajun accent?
Oh,
eyes
God.
down the hill.
I hope not.
If he sounds like Foghorn Leghorn.
Oh,
What if
man.
he's Patois, man?
Dude.
Could be.
We should
sounds
do a
like
4-man podcast in patois. Would you guys consider that?
If we can get Chet Hayes on the Zoom call, then
Yes.
yes.
I learned all my Patois from Chet Hayes, so
And we'll get Steven Seagal.
so
to
you know
speak
it's
in his-
authentic. Huh?
Steven Seagal to speak in his Creole accent.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm already gaining weight and losing hair to be more like him.
Dude, so this part of Indiana is interesting again because like the Peru, Mexico, like I learned a lot about Indiana through this thing. Just I know like all these Mexico, Peru, Kokomo. I mean, what the fuck? Why?
Now you know why Axl Rose left.
Yeah,
Every place that was named in that Beach Boys song.
yeah.
I enjoyed when we went to Indiana. I had a blast. John has no interest in any true crime stuff, and I was able to trick him into coming with us by getting him a plane ticket to Indiana, telling him we're going hiking. But I don't know that I fully explained what we were going to be doing there.
No, you didn't. I should have known, though.
Were you
We did
spooked
go
out though?
Uh-huh. I was spooked out, sure.
Yeah, I was too. Yeah, I think
The woods were definitely scary. I mean, with the knowledge that we were in a crime scene.
and we were the only ones there most of the time. We were there for 2 consecutive days, and most of the time we were the only ones there. I only remember passing people a couple times, and the second time really spooked me out because
They were on an ATV.
They were on ATVs. As we were leaving, we heard the sound of. I didn't know they were ATVs at the time, but sound of some kind of fucking motorized vehicle. And when we had headed in there that day, that's when we heard what was a gunshot, and we heard metal banging against wood, which was especially concerning. But yeah, very spooky. It's physically beautiful, but the vibe is definitely weird. And especially when you see that bridge come into view, that's really creepy. And it's rotting. And I can't believe that they paved that walkway leading to the bridge.
Yeah, I can't believe
without-
it's not fenced off, that you can't have access to it. I can't believe it's a destination for children to go. I know there's not much to do, but there's a fucking park that doesn't have a bridge with a 200-foot drop on it.
Yeah.
Go to the safe fucking park, not to the creepy rail wood bridge.
Go to Pizza Hut.
Yeah, honestly.
There's one takeaway from this. Just treat yourself to the fucking Delphi Pizza Hut because
Which brings
it is
us
delicious.
to our first sponsor. Thank you, Pizza Hut.
Thank you, Delphi Pizza Hut. This episode of Little Snickers is brought to you by the Delphi Pizza
Just
Hut.
one location.
Bottomless Pepsis.
Delphi, Indiana Pizza Hut might be the closest sit-down Pizza Hut to us in Philly, so
I know it's not. But if you want to go back, fine.
I do want to go back. And yeah, if you guys are up for going back sometime, I would like to go back because it is a beautiful place and there is a lot of context to be gained. One of the things that really stood out to me about visiting the trails is the point where the girls are dropped off in relation to the road, the access point where the girls are dropped off on the road. I don't know the name of that road there.
It's the Mears lot or Mears entrance is what that's referred to. I can't remember the name of the road either.
On the other side of the bridge where you have to cross over the highway, you mean? Is that where they got dropped off or did they get dropped off?
No, it was where all the memorials are.
Yeah.
So
The crossroads, yeah.
I hope I can explain it well enough, but where the girls were dropped off, they walked toward the trails, and at the point where they actually get onto the trail splits. You could take the lower trail, which leads directly to Deer Creek, or you could take the higher trail, which leads to the Monon High Bridge. Now, at this split in the trails, there's a bench there where if someone was there for nefarious purposes, I could picture them waiting at that bench and just playing it off like they're just somebody that's relaxing there on the fucking trails while you have these kids coming in from the road in full sight line the entire way, watching them get dropped off and then watching them to see which direction they go.
Well, that would imply two people, wouldn't it? Because someone had to be on the south end of the bridge when they were crossing it.
I don't think so, man.
Is that not necessarily true that the person was south of them on the bridge?
No, because if
Bridge guy was coming north.
he went
towards
north to south as well. Yeah.
Oh, so he was on the bridge after them.
Yeah, you
Not
could
on
see-
the opposite side and walking towards them.
Yeah, in the video, he's cooking across that bridge, so he's clearly comfortable crossing that. And the girls seem comfortable crossing it too from the pictures. But it's especially concerning seeing how a guy that's kind of built like that is just
You could just be
cooking
reading the
across that bridge.
newspaper and then followed two innocent little girls into the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they had people going across as fast as they could, and these are people that do it like regularly, and then they would get across. It took I think 4 minutes.
4 minutes
It
was like the
fastest or
quickest that I've
something
seen.
like that.
And they're
So-
really moving fast.
Yeah.
Oh,
Damn.
yeah, basically running across, and
So that thing's like a half mile almost.
I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah,
It is
I
terrifying
don't know.
though, man. I would like to try to go across it again just to see if I could do it.
I don't think that's necessary or a good idea.
Probably not, man, but it's so fucked up, especially the first quarter of the bridge. There's so many rotting ties on there, and I'm stunned that somebody hasn't fallen through that fucking thing yet.
Was it Butterly? He said he could do it blindfolded.
Oh, I didn't want to.
He did,
up.
but yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't want to raise that demon.
You
All
know what?
right,
I
I'll go
believe in
back
him.
then.
I believe in him.
He can feel it. I know it.
Dude. We were out there. I didn't care about animals, 4-wheelers, shotguns, metal. None of that stuff, murder scene. None of that shit bothers me at all. But going across that fucking bridge,
No
no,
fucking
fucking thank
way.
you. It ain't
No.
happening, man.
It's ominous, man. Like as soon as there was a fence, I think discouraging people from going any further from where part of the typical trail. Remember that fence that you had to walk around?
Yeah, but it is in no means like you just said they paved the path that
They
leads
did,
up
man.
to the
It's
thing.
insane that they did that. I
Yeah.
don't know why they did.
I don't either.
But yeah, when you see this fucking bridge coming to your sight line, it is imposing.
I'm sorry, I just thought about you.
Yes, I knew that's all you would be thinking about the rest of this podcast.
Out of all of us, I would like to see you fall through, Jason.
It would be the best and the funniest one.
Maybe even get.
Would you hold
stuck
your nose?
partially.
I think I would involuntarily make a Farley noise.
I was thinking Chris Farley
Yeah.
all the way. It's just,
Would you do that Looney
Get it
Tunes where your
down,
feet are going
down.
real quick before you drop?
Yep.
All
Some
right.
real.
We got to make you fall off that bridge.
Yeah.
come on, man, fall off the
I'm
bridge.
definitely gonna fall off that bridge.
Yeah.
All right, boy. I
for
could talk
everybody.
about this all night, but I think we covered a lot tonight, and I think if you want to do it again, I would love to talk more about this because I'm sure in the coming weeks there's going to be more developments. I think November 22nd is the hearing to determine whether or not the probable cause affidavit will be made public.
Yeah, there has to be more information that comes out now, right?
You'll see something before November 17th anyway.
Okay.
Because he has to have some sort of
They have to know
defense. It has to be declared.
And the
He has to have a
defense will
lawyer.
have to answer questions, right? Like to the press.
No, they don't have
Really?
to say shit. No, they don't have to say shit. They will make a statement more than likely,
Yeah,
but they don't have to say shit.
Okay.
That's the common misconception about that. The way that information is disseminated out by law enforcement, it's really at their discretion. Even though, like, you can get FOIA and all that
up
stuff
until certain points,
right? Yeah, and but a lot of times they have a lot of leniency saying that this is under investigation. We're not going to talk about that. That's subjective a lot of times.
This one's very interesting because I think they have gone to the edge of where they can go in suppressing information to the point where they're going to damage the case.
Yeah, it's really frustrating how little they have released,
Yeah.
I've had many, PCs sealed on things. Always had to give a good reason to the judge. I don't have a problem with them doing it, but the interest in it has to be for the public good. And the only interest I can see in the public good for this is you've got evidence that is under what they call exigent circumstances that you have to have an emergency seal to stop it from being destroyed or improperly collected or lost or whatever.
You have no idea what that means.
And secondly, other parties involved saying that they're, they meet fair justice. So
Okay. Yeah, I guess if
it's
there
not
is
that,
any
they got
other
a lot of
party.
explaining to do.
There's already been a judge recusal, so they're on their second judge
God,
for this.
That guy
already.
was hilarious.
Who recuses himself or
I think he petitions for recusal, and then I guess like the state does it.
Yeah, he basically did it to the state Supreme Court and says, look, he doesn't have to declare under Indiana law why he's recusing himself. They usually do off the record say, hey, whatever. But this guy wrote an order that was awesome to read because he freaked the fuck out on paper, which I've never seen a judge do.
It's got to be a nightmare too for whatever public defender gets tasked with fucking defending this dickhead.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a capital case, it's going to be two of them.
Okay.
And they're not out of the public defender's office in Indiana. They're appointed local attorneys who are on the public defender's list.
really?
In Indiana, the public defender
Still
doesn't come in for pre-conviction cases for the most part.
Still be like from Indianapolis or possibly.
Yeah,
something like
possibly.
that.
They'll appoint someone who's capable.
But
from the
they
public
are
defender's
typically a private law.
Generally they're private law who work on public defender salaries. But I mean, any big attorney on the list would want this case. Like, this is a name-making case. Like,
Regardless of what the chances are of them winning,
no,
you would want to take this.
It's huge. Take it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something that you see with really good defense attorneys all the time. Even as hopeless as it is, if it's a big case like this, like, you can get out there and strut.
Okay.
For sure. And and later on we can talk about if it's going to be televised or not and all that shit. But it'll be weird. I'll bet you a gentleman's bet that it's televised.
Oh wow.
I am not a gentleman, so I will not take the bet. So you
All
can
right.
go fuck yourself.
Boys, this was great to talk with you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for
appreciate your expertise.
letting us bend your ears.
Thank you guys,
Yeah,
man. This
thanks
is
for entertaining the thought of us
Sorry.
two idiots being on here.
Well, you
Sorry,
guys are the closest things
stars,
to
man.
experts that we know.
Yeah.
sorry we weren't funnier, but this is
We're not very funny people.
Yeah, it's just no
No, it's just
This is not the time
Yeah.
to be funny
Yeah.
for the most part, unless we're talking about Pizza Hut.
yeah, pizza. And honestly, this is one of our favorite shows anyway. So
likewise.
it's really an honor to be here.
You literally
Likewise.
are my favorite true crime podcast, and that's not just because I know you. I fucking love you guys.
That means a lot.
love you
Thank
I love you guys. I actually
Check
got
out their podcast, TRASHE. They got a shitload of awesome guests on there.
We try. We have people who are very nice, like yourselves.
Are you guys working on something new, you were saying?
Yeah.
They're
we've got
working on
something-
shaving your mother's bush. I didn't tell you about that yet.
Yes,
So if you guys
the
want to elaborate
landscaping
upon that,
business.
yeah.
We are gentle. We've got something dropping hopefully the next month.
Oh, sick, man.
Something in the area of crime and
Okay.
whatnot.
Yeah.
I can't
Since
wait
we
to
know
hear
it.
it.
Very cool.
I got to take them to my favorite pizza place a couple months ago.
Did you?
They came for the Gillian Keys taping, and They met me at Pika's Pizza in Upper Darby, and we had the oldest waitress known to man serving us, and we weren't sure that she was going to make it out of the kitchen.
Damn.
But she was, I mean,
John fell in love.
I did. I mean,
I fell in love. He fell in love.
She's actually under John's table right now.
As soon as I walked in, it was eye fucking just, and she was talking about, dripping wet. It was a lot of innuendo.
She did say that she can't. It was hot as shit because it was fucking August. But she walked to our table, and the first thing she said to us was, "I'm dripping."
Yeah,
buddy.
Which was,
I'm taking the engagement or the wedding ring off as soon as I hear that.
Yeah. So God bless her heart wherever she is right now.
She'll probably lick it off. Is all I'm saying.
How pervert. Boys,
beautiful lady.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I look forward to talking with you guys again, and I would like to talk Delphi again with you sometime soon.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
Jason, John, I love you guys. John, I don't tell you this often, but I do love you too.
Oh boy, I love you too, and I love you guys as well. Thanks for coming on the show.
Danny, I love you too.
Yeah, we should keep up.
Everybody.
I love all you guys watching this too. If you guys want to meet up for Pizza Hut, let us know. All right, we'll see you guys soon. Later. Oh, check out patreon.com/LilStinkers. That's LILSTINKERS. We post new stuff on there every week. We post free episodes every week too. Just come have fun with us either way. Also, I like to promote my book, which is On Perks, and you can buy it at onperks.com. That's ONPERCS.com. That documents my close to 3-year run with prescription painkillers, where unfortunately I was very active on Facebook. So
Prolific.
Thank you, man. So every moronic perk thought that I had is documented in this book, in addition to an in-depth analysis of each post. So thank you to those who have ordered, and if you want to order, go to onperks.com and check it out. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.